Ravenwood University, located in a small town in Massachusetts, had always been known for its gothic buildings, its ancient history filled with mysteries and legends. At night, the place took on an even more frightening aura, with shadows that seemed to dance on the stone walls and trees whispering secrets to the wind. Dara Thompson, a sophomore, never believed in ghosts or demons. She was a practical girl, focused on her psychology studies, and had little patience for the horror stories her classmates told around the campfire during autumn night. But all that changed the night her roommate, Emily Carter, started acting strange. Emily was a diligent student, shy and always polite. However, in recent weeks she began to change. First, there were the deep circles that suddenly appeared under her eyes. Then, the vacant, distant look she began to display. She stopped leaving the room and started muttering to herself in a language Sarah couldn't identify. That night, everything reached a new level of terror. Sarah woke up to a guttural, almost animalistic sound coming from the dark corner of the room. Her eyes took a moment to adjust to the darkness, but when they finally focused, she saw Emily, contorted in an unnatural way, her eyes wide open and glowing with an impossible light. She was muttering in an unknown language, her voice sounding as if multiple people were speaking at once. With her heart racing, Sarah slowly approached, calling Emily's name. Whatever was there, it was no longer Emily. Suddenly, she lunged at Sarah, who instinctively backed up and fell onto the cold floor. The door slammed shut with a bang, and Sarah felt the air grow heavy, as if an invisible force was pressing against her chest. Desperate, she tried to reach her phone, but Emily's hand, or whatever it was, clamped down on her wrist with superhuman strength. Sarah screamed in pain and fear, her eyes locked on her friend's distorted figure. "You shouldn't have come here," Emily's voice whispered, but it sounded as if it was scraped from the inside out. "This place is cursed." Sarah managed to break free and ran for the door, but before she could reach the handle, the room's lights began to flicker violently. Objects were thrown from the shelves as if an invisible hand was hurling them with fury. She heard laughter, deep, guttural, and distorted, echoing off the walls. Then the door suddenly opened, and there stood Father Michael, the university chaplain. He had been alerted by other students who heard the screams and commotion. With a cross in hand and a determined look, he entered the room, murmuring prayers in Latin. Emily writhed on the floor, her eyes rolling back in her head as she hissed curses in an inhuman tone. "Leave this body," Father Michael commanded, his voice resonating through the room. The air seemed to vibrate with the growing tension. Emily's figure fought against an invisible force that held her to the ground. The battle lasted what felt like hours until, finally, a terrifying scream echoed through the room, and Emily's body relaxed. She passed out, and the tension in the air eased. Sarah ran to her friend, holding her carefully, tears streaming down her face. Father Michael looked at them, his face marked by fatigue. "She needs rest and prayer. This is not a safe place for anyone else. We must leave immediately." As they left, Sarah looked back at the now calm room, still impregnated with a sense of evil. She knew that what had happened there that night would not be easily forgotten, and more than that, she knew that something much darker was still to come. The next morning brought an eerie silence to Ravenwood University's dormitory. Sarah woke up on the couch in the building's common room, where she and Emily had been taken by Father Michael after the exorcism. Emily lay on an improvised stretcher, still unconscious, with a thick blanket covering her thin body. The chaplain had spent the night in vigil, reciting prayers and ensuring the evil did not return. Dara slowly stood up, still feeling the weight of what had happened the night before. Her mind was a mess. She wanted to believe it was all just a nightmare, but the pain in her wrist where Emily had grabbed her with superhuman strength said otherwise. The red marks from her fingers were still visible, cruel reminder of the previous night. Father Michael, noticing that Sarah was awake, approached silently. "She hasn't woken up yet," he said, his voice low and tired. "But it's better this way. We need to keep her safe, and she needs to rest." "But what happened? What was that?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. The priest took a deep breath before answering. There was something very old and evil inside her. Something this university has carried for decades, maybe even centuries. I'm not sure how or why, but evil found its way to Emily. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. What are we going to do now? How can we help Emily? She will need intensive care, he replied, and we need to find the source of this evil. Something tells me this is just the beginning. As they discussed the next steps, a group of curious students began to gather outside the common room. The rumor about what had happened the night before had spread quickly across campus. Some said it was a bad prank, others talked about demonic possession, and some even mentioned ancient curses associated with the university. Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. There was something in the air. Presence she couldn't see but could clearly feel. Her classmates' eyes followed her as she walked down the hallway, murmuring among themselves. She could sense the fear but also the growing curiosity. One of the students, Lisa, a girl from the history department, approached Sarah. I heard what happened. Do you think it's related to the university's history? There are a lot of rumors about this place, about cults and things like that. Sarah looked at Lisa, pondering the question. I don't know. Father Michael mentioned something about an ancient evil. Do you know anything about it? Lisa nodded slowly. There's an old story, a legend about a group of students who dabbled in black magic in the basement of the theology building many years ago. They say they summoned something that should never have been awakened. Sarah's heart began to race. Do you know where that basement is? Yes, Lisa replied. I can show you. The basement of the theology building was a place few dared to visit. Fluorescent lights flickered irregularly, casting strange shadows on the stone walls. The air was cold and damp, and the smell of mold was strong. Sarah, Lisa, and Father Michael descended the old stone stairs, each step echoing in the darkness. Many years ago, this place was used for practical theology classes and ancient philosophy, Lisa explained as they walked. But after the incident, well, they locked everything up and banned access. They say the professors at the time wanted to bury the secrets hidden here. The group reached a heavy wooden door, partially covered in moss and rust. There were symbols carved into the wood, symbols Sarah had never seen before, but that made her stomach churn just by looking at them. Father Michael murmured a prayer, and with effort, pushed the door open. The interior of the basement was even darker than the hallway. Piles of old books, hanging scrolls, and extinguished candles were scattered everywhere. In the center of the room, a large circle was drawn on the floor, that with symbols extending to the walls. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. This is it, Father Michael said, his voice deep. This is where it all began. As they examined the area, Sarah noticed something shining in the corner of the room. She approached and saw a small gold medallion, dirty and worn with time. Carefully picking it up, she noticed a familiar symbol engraved on the surface, the same symbol carved into the door. This symbol, I've seen it before, Sarah said, holding the medallion around Emily's neck. She wore a necklace with this symbol. Father Michael frowned. That's not good. This symbol is an ancient seal of protection, but it can also serve as a channel for evil forces. If Emily was wearing it, it might have been what allowed the spirit to enter. Suddenly, a cold wind swept through the room, extinguishing the candles and throwing the books into the air. A low, almost imperceptible laugh reverberated off the stone walls. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest as she frantically turned, trying to locate the source of the sound. We need to get out of here, Father Michael ordered. Now. As they ran back to the stairs, Sarah could feel the dark presence following them, each step feeling heavier than the last. When they finally reached the top, the basement door slammed shut with a deafening bang. Lisa looked at Sarah, fear etched on her face. What do we do now? Father Michael took a deep breath. We need to find out more about what happened here and how we can undo the evil that was unleashed. This university holds many secrets, and I'm afraid we've only just begun to uncover the depths of its darkness. Sarah nodded, determined. We'll find answers, Emily, and for all of us. In the days that followed, Sarah felt as if she were trapped in a constant nightmare. The Ravenwood University campus, which was once a haven of learning and friendships, now seemed shrouded in a cloud of fear and distrust. Rumors about what had happened to Emily spread quickly, and the university decided to act, trying to stifle any stories that could tarnish its reputation. Sarah, however, was determined to find out the truth. She knew there was something very wrong with that university, something ancient and evil that could not be ignored. She spent her days researching in the university library, reading books on the occult and old stories about the institution. Lisa accompanied her whenever she could, sharing the discoveries and theories they found. One afternoon, while flipping through an old dusty book, Sarah found something that caught her eye. It was a 1920 account describing a group of students who mysteriously disappeared. According to the text, the students were involved in occult practices, trying to summon an ancient spirit they believed could grant them unlimited power and knowledge. But something went wrong. Instead of summoning a benevolent spirit, they unleashed something much darker. "Lisa, look at this," Sarah said, pushing the book towards her friend. The students disappeared. No one ever found their bodies. Only one message was left, written in blood on the wall: "He awakened." Lisa read the excerpt in silence, feeling a chill run down her spine. That's awful. What if what happened to Emily is part of this? What if they never managed to banish whatever they summoned? Sarah nodded, her eyes fixed on the page. "We need to talk to Father Michael. He mentioned he felt an ancient, evil presence. Maybe this is connected to what happened almost a century ago." That night, they went to the university chapel, where they found Father Michael kneeling in prayer. Upon seeing them, he rose slowly, his face reflecting the exhaustion of many sleepless days. "Father, we found something," Sarah said, handing the book to the chaplain. "It's from 1920. A group of students who disappeared after summoning something." Father Michael quickly skimmed through the pages, his eyes narrowing as he read the account. "This confirms my worst fears," he murmured. "For a long time, Ravenwood University has been a place where good and evil coexist. These students tampered with forces they did not understand, and now we are paying the price." Lisa crossed her arms, clearly disturbed. "But what can we do? Emily is still possessed, and it seems like the evil they awakened was never really contained. We need to perform a purification ritual," Father Michael explained, looking directly at the two. "But it's not simple. This type of ritual requires a specific location, a place where the evil was originally awakened." "You mean the basement?" Sarah asked, feeling a wave of fear rise her spine. Father Michael nodded. "Yes, exactly there. But we'll need more than just prayers. We need artifacts that have been used to fight evil over the century. And we'll need you, Sarah. There's a strength in you, something I saw from the first time we met." Sarah swallowed hard, feeling the weight of responsibility. "I'll do whatever it takes to help Emily." In the days that followed, Sarah and Lisa helped Father Michael gather everything needed for the ritual. They found consecrated candles, ancient sacred texts, holy water, and a set of ceremonial bells. Each item was carefully chosen, each playing a crucial role in combating the evil presence clinging to the campus. As they prepared, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Several times, she felt a chill run down her spine as she noticed shadows moving across the dorm walls or heard whispers that seemed to come from all sides. Lisa was also nervous, always looking over her shoulder, as if expecting to see something terrible approaching. Finally, the day arrived. The campus was eerily quiet, as if even the wind had stopped in anticipation of what was to come. Sarah, Lisa, and Father Michael made their way to the basement of the theology building, carrying the necessary artifacts for the ritual. The air was heavy and dense as they descended the stone stairs. When they reached the basement, they found the doors open, as if waiting for them. The circle on the floor was more visible than before, the symbols seeming to glow with a faint light. "Place the candles at the points of the circle," instructed Father Michael, his voice firm but with a touch of urgency. "I will start the prayers. Sarah, you must ring the bells with each invocation." Sarah nodded, trying to keep her hands steady as she placed the candles in the indicated spots. When she finished, she took hold of the bells, feeling the cold weight of the metal in her hand. Father Michael began to recite the prayers in Latin, his voice echoing off the stone walls. The atmosphere in the basement changed almost immediately. The air grew even heavier, and the temperature dropped abruptly. Sarah felt an invisible force pressing against her body, making it difficult to breathe. Father Michael continued praying, each word seeming to cut through the darkness around them. Suddenly, a low, guttural laugh echoed through the room, followed by a scream that made Sarah's blood run cold. She turned and saw Emily, who had been brought to the basement, sitting on the floor, her eyes wide and filled with a fury that was not hers. "You fools!" The distorted voice of Emily shouted. "You think you can banish me? This place is mine. I was here long before you and will be here long after." Father Michael raised the cross in his hand, advancing towards Emily. "Leave this body, foul spirit. I command you in the name of the Almighty." Sarah rang the bells as instructed, the sharp sound echoing throughout the basement. Emily writhed and screamed, the sound reverberating off the stone walls. Candles flickered violently, almost going out. The temperature continued to drop, and Sarah could see her own breath in the icy air. The invisible force that had been pressing on Sarah now seemed to be intensified. She struggled to keep focus, ringing the bells harder as Father Michael continued his prayers. Lisa stood beside her, holding a vial of holy water, her eyes wide with fear. Suddenly, a gust of wind swept through the basement, extinguishing the candles and throwing the artifacts into the air. Emily's scream grew louder, turning into a high-pitched wail that seemed to penetrate everyone's soul. "I will not leave," the guttural voice screamed as Emily's body twisted violently on the floor. "Keep going," Father Michael shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. "We're winning. Keep going." Sarah felt a new sense of determination take hold of her. Despite the fear, she knew she couldn't give up now. She continued ringing the bells, her hands aching and bleeding, but never stopping. Suddenly, there was a deafening silence. Emily's body stopped writhing and lay completely still. Sarah and Lisa exchanged anxious looks, but Father Michael kept his eyes closed, focused on his prayers. Then, with a long, ragged sigh, Emily opened her eyes. They were no longer bright and full of hatred. Instead, they were her eyes, the eyes of her friend. "Sarah," she murmured, her voice weak and hoarse. Sarah dropped to her knees beside her, tears streaming down her face. "Emily, you're back." Father Michael sighed in relief, lowering the cross. "We did it. At least for now." The atmosphere at Ravenwood University seemed lighter after the ritual in the basement. Emily was finally conscious, still weak but clearly regaining her strength. The university's medical team suggested she be transferred to a hospital, but Emily refused, preferring to stay on campus, surrounded by friends. "I feel like this is my place, even with everything that happened," she told Sarah, her voice still a bit hoarse. "Besides, I need to understand what really happened to me." Sarah, sitting beside Emily's bed, held her hand tightly. "We'll figure it out together. I won't leave you alone in this." Though the spirit that had possessed Emily had been expelled, campus was still far from safe. Father Michael was concerned. He knew the evil at Ravenwood had not been fully eradicated. It had only been contained temporarily. There was more to be done, and he began to formulate a plan. That night, while Emily rested, Sarah and Lisa met with Father Michael in the small chapel on campus. Candles were lit, and the atmosphere was quiet except for the soft whisper of the wind against the windows. The spirit may have been expelled from Emily, but it wasn't destroyed. Father Michael began, looking intensely at the two girls. "It's still here, somewhere. The only way to ensure it doesn't return is to find the source of the evil. We need to discover exactly what the students of 1920 summoned." Lisa, always curious, leaned forward. "Do you think the students from 1920 left any record of what they did? Diary? A note? Something that could help us?" Father Michael nodded. "It's possible. In fact, in the university's archive, there's a room that's been locked for decades. It's said to hold ancient and dangerous secrets. I suspect the records we need are in there." Sarah felt a chill. "Then we'll go in and find out. Can't leave it like this." The next day, Sarah, Lisa, and Father Michael made their way to the archive building, an old, imposing structure on the edge of campus. The main door was heavy, made of solid oak, and was locked. Father Michael pulled out a set of keys from his pocket. "I got this from the dean," he explained, and with a turn of the key, the door creaked open. The air inside was heavy and smelled of dust and aged paper. Endless rows of shelves filled the room, all full of documents, books, and records dating back to the university's founding. They walked carefully, lighting the way with lanterns, trying not to disturb the oppressive silence. "Look for anything that seems out of the ordinary," Father Michael instructed. "Anything that seems out of place or contains information about occult practices." As they searched the shelves, Sarah found a section that seemed different. It was covered with a dusty tarp, and there were strange symbols painted on the wall behind it. She pulled the tarp aside, revealing a shelf full of leather-bound books, all with the same symbol she had seen on the medallion found in the basement. "Father, I think I found something," she called out. They approached, and Father Michael picked up one of the books, flipping through its yellowed pages. "This is a journal," he said, his voice a reverent whisper. "It appears to be the journal of one of the students involved in the rituals of 1920. He read silently for a few minutes before speaking. They were trying to summon an ancient spirit, a demon named Morgan. According to the journal, they believed he would grant them wisdom and power. But the ritual went wrong. Instead of controlling the spirit, they released it and it devoured them, body and soul." Lisa shuddered. "That's horrible. But why would the spirit stay here for so long? Why would it attack Emily now?" Father Michael continued reading. "According to this journal, the spirit can only be completely destroyed at the site of its original summoning, in the basement. But they also mention some sort of anchor, an object that binds the spirit to this world." Sarah thought for a moment. The medallion. Emily found it months ago at a garage sale. She said she felt drawn to it, but never knew why. "We need to destroy the medallion," Father Michael said, closing the journal. "And we need to do it in the basement where it all began." That night, the group returned to the university basement, now armed with new knowledge and a clear purpose. Emily, still weak, insisted on going with them. "If this is my fault somehow, I want to help fix it," she said. When they entered the basement, the air was even heavier than before. It was as if the very environment was breathing, pulsating with a dark, malevolent energy. In the center of the room, the circle and symbols they had seen earlier seemed to glow with an evil light. Father Michael began to prepare the space for the final ritual. "Sarah, Lisa, place the medallion in the center of the circle. Emily, you will stay by my side. We need your presence to draw it out. Still connected to you somehow." With everything ready, Father Michael began chanting the ancient words of exorcism, his tone stronger and more authoritative than ever. Sarah and Lisa held the medallion in the center of the circle, feeling the metal vibrate in their hands as if it were alive. Suddenly, the atmosphere around them changed. The shadows on the walls began to move of their own accord, taking on grotesque and distorted shapes. A malevolent, guttural laugh echoed through the basement, and a crushing pressure fell upon all of them. "Don't stop. Keep your focus," Father Michael shouted over the rising roar. "We're almost there." Emily began to tremble, tears streaming from her eyes as the demonic laugh filled the room. "Get out of me," she screamed, her voice echoing with a mix of fear and anger. Sarah felt the dark presence closing in, as if enveloped in a cloud of pure evil. The pressure around her was almost unbearable. She held firm, gripping the medallion as tightly as she could. The medallion began to glow with an intense, almost blinding light. Emily's scream grew louder, and the very floor of the basement began to shake. Father Michael, in a final desperate effort, raised his cross and pressed it against the medallion. "Codi vos relinquo," he shouted, his voice echoing like thunder. With a final scream, the medallion exploded in a burst of light, throwing everyone back. The shadows vanished, and the basement fell into a deep silence. For a moment, no one moved. Sarah slowly got up, looking around. Emily was lying down, breathing heavily but conscious. Father Michael, on his knees, looked exhausted but satisfied. "We did it," he murmured. "The evil has finally been expelled from this place." Sarah helped Emily up, feeling a wave of relief wash over her. "It's over, Emily. You're safe now." Emily weakly smiled. "Thank you, all of you. I thought I'd never get out of this." Lisa looked at Father Michael. "What about the future? How will we know it's really over?" Father Michael nodded. "We'll keep watch and protect this place, and we'll do everything in our power to ensure this evil never returns." Ravenwood University returned to its normal routine in the days that followed. But for those who had been in the basement, nothing would ever be the same. Sarah, Emily, Lisa, and Father Michael formed an unbreakable bond, friendship forged in the heat of terror and darkness. Though the campus seemed brighter, the echo of the words whispered by Emily that night still lingered in Sarah's mind. This place is cursed. But now they knew that together, they could face any darkness that came their way. And they were ready for whatever the future might bring.